You're listening to the Decidedly podcast with Sanger Smith and Sean Smith. Our mission is to help business owners like you defeat bad decision-making so you can improve your health, wealth, and relationships. We do this by digging deep into the stories and expertise of our guests and distilling their knowledge into actionable wisdom for you to carry into your life and business. If you're new to the show, welcome. Be sure to hit the subscribe button so you won't miss out on any of our weekly episodes. If you prefer to watch this week's episode, head on over to YouTube for the full video. Now, let's get into this week's episode and defeat bad decision-making in your life and business.
What'd you do for 4th of July?
I was in Florida. We had...
with Summer and her family?
Mm-hmm. We were out on the back deck over the lake and watching about 12 different fireworks displays going on.
I bet it was nuts.
It was crazy. It was so cool because it would echo off the lake.
Yeah. You got the lake and then the ocean. Gulf right there.
So everybody along the beach is doing fireworks, just like boom, boom, boom. We're just watching them. There's just a line of them go. And I'm not talking about little ones. I mean, these are expensive homes. So these guys are just spending dumb money for their own fireworks just out in the sand.
That's the best. There's no point in buying fireworks. You can always watch someone else.
I'm just going to piggyback on some rich guy who's spending a bunch of money on fireworks, spending like thousands of dollars on his own fireworks.
Yeah.
I'm just going to watch his.
Yeah, me too. You can't stop me from watching it either.
Right.
I'm going to watch it.
Can't make me turn around.
Yeah. Ha. Take that. So you know the Roman candles?
Yeah.
The ones that you hold and they...
Oh, yeah, and you shoot them at each other?
Yeah.
Oh,
I didn't know you shot them at each other.
Oh, that's what you do?
No, I was terrified. I was with Megan, my fiance, and her family, and we're at her aunt and uncle's house. It's like everybody, all the cousins and the aunts and uncles, everybody, grandparents. And she's like, oh, you want to do a Roman candle war? I go, that sounds unsafe and stupid.
Yeah.
And she's like,
to be fair,
no.
they say don't do that. But, of course, that's what...
Okay, well, I accidentally hit the house.
Oh,
yeah.
Nice.
Hilarious.
Oh.
It hit the house.
Oh, so when I was in...
It looked like a war zone.
When I was in high school, we were at the lake and one of the buddies' cars ran out of gas. So he had to go to the gas station, but he didn't have a tank. And so he filled up... He was 16. He filled up like a Tupperware container that didn't have a lid on it.
Okay.
With gas and got it back to his car. So he's carrying open gas in a Tupperware container.
Okay.
And one of the other buddies started shooting bottle rockets.
No.
Yeah.
No.
Yeah. Yeah. That's the dumb kind of things you do when you're 16.
Yeah,
those
are the stories where you're thankful you made it out alive.
Oh man.
Well,
idiots.
The one smart decision I made
on
4th of July.
Sure.
Drinking a lot of non-alcoholic beer.
Oh, I bet you did.
It was wonderful.
Yeah.
And I didn't have a hangover. I felt good. I was able to participate with everyone else.
Did you get other people to join in on that?
I did.
Yeah.
Yeah. And they liked it.
Oh, cool.
And that's almost always how it goes. They go, oh, that's actually pretty good. Yeah. And speaking of non-alcoholic beer, our guest today makes the beer that I was drinking. Joe Chura, who's the founder of Go Brewing, based in Naperville. We had him on the podcast a couple of years ago when Go Brewing was a idea. He hadn't even sold a single can, and now they are all over the place. You can find them online, probably coming to a store near you. They're expanding all across the country. So we got into the story of his expansion, the story of starting the company, scaling it up to what it is today, and how he plans to grow it in the future. We talked a lot about the unique culture of non-alcoholic brewing and the community that drinks it like I do, and the future of the industry as a whole. So I think you'll really like our podcast with Joe. He's got a lot of great business insights, wonderful stories, and really, really smart guy. So stick around. You'll learn a lot. I'm Sanger Smith with my dad, Sean Smith, and this is Decidedly. Dude, what's up, man? How was
How many non-alcoholic beers did you drink on Independence Day?
Oh, quite a few. I was in Tahoe. I just got back. I actually just got back now. We had a red eye and it was delayed. And I got in. I tried to sleep on the plane the best I could. Today we have some big announcements at Go. And I was like, oh my God, I have like too much going on. And we were not going to be able to come in. I was going to have to message you guys. But then
you made it.
Miraculously, yeah, the miracle happened and was able to get in. So
you in Tahoe just with the family?
Yeah, we have a place out there. I've had a place pre-COVID, and there was like shitty weather in Illinois coming up for the holidays. So my wife's like, let's go to Tahoe. She's a smart one in the family, and I'm like, all right, let's do it.
It's a good spot, man.
It's nice for us. Yeah, it's our happy place for sure.
Awesome. I don't know if I told you this. I think I sent you the picture right after we talked last, and you were on the podcast back. I think it was like in 2021 or something like that. And Sanger was competing in a triathlon in Hawaii, like the next week or a couple of weeks after that. And I got this big cardboard sign at like mile. I don't know. It was early on. It was like mile 7 of the marathon.
Yeah.
And it said, you're not there yet.
Yeah. You're not almost there.
You're not almost there. Yeah. You're not almost there, in tribute to Joe,
Oh,
and,
that's awesome.
I needed to send you that picture.
He was getting booed.
Yeah. People hated it. Oh, people hated me because it was so early on.
It's the worst night ever. Yeah.
Yes.
No, I can attest to that, how bad that feels when you're up past.
Yeah. Well, I had another, so later on, you can't do that for, 3 hours of a thing. So later on, I had an extra pair of shorts and underwear that I put down around my ankles and held the sign in front of me. So it looked like my pants were down. And it said, speed up or I'm dropping the sign. And that
one, he got a lot more positive.
Yeah, people enjoyed that one more.
Yeah. That one was much more motivating for people.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. They sprinted past me to keep me from.
That's awesome.
Well, dude, we're already recording. We don't have a big whole, opener planned or anything. You know the drill. You've been here before. I'm just happy to have you back, man. The business has really grown since last time you were here. I think you had not yet launched the beer yet, right? It was in its infancy.
Yeah, I don't even remember how much I talked about it, but I look at it as like we really launched in January 23. We had a couple months before that we were experimenting and testing things and just getting the product right. But yeah, for all intents and purposes, I look at it as like January 2023 is our launch date.
Yeah, you were talking about that you were going to start it, and so we didn't really have a lot of questions. We didn't get a chance to talk about it then because it didn't really exist then. But what caused you to want to get into not only the non-alcoholic brewing space, but setting up the tap room and the event center and all of that, because that's a different direction as well. What caused you to have an interest in doing all that?
Yeah, I think first and foremost, creating a non-alcoholic brewery in itself was inspired by 75 Hard when I did that challenge, and it was the first time in my life where I abstained from alcohol for a period of time longer than a few days, honestly. And that.
What is 75 Hard?
75 Hard is a 75-day challenge where there's like 10 or so guidelines that you have to adhere to. It's self-policed. But one of those, I'll talk about a few of them. You have to work out twice a day, 45 minutes each. One has to be at least outside. You have to drink a gallon of water a day. You have to read 10 pages in a book. And there's a bunch of other things. But one of the main things is you can't drink alcohol for 75 days. So this was the height of COVID. My wife and I were just being gluttons like many of us were. And finally, we were just like, we need something that's going to be very challenging that we could stick to and support each other. And that's when we heard about the 75 Hard challenge. We're like, let's do something really hard. And up until that point, I was having like massive cravings, wanting to drink on a daily basis. Like I was fortunate enough to not to wake up and want to have booze. Like my father my father succumbed from alcohol in 2006. My brother was in the hospital literally every week, and he's 4 years younger than me. But in the mornings I would be okay, but then started like 4 or 5 o'clock, I would have these massive cravings for beer, for alcohol. And I just knew something had to change. I was overweight. I was just not feeling great. And because of COVID, there is all these excuses to even drink more, right? So anyway, we did this challenge, and like halfway through it, I felt like I had superpowers. I was like, this is incredible. Like how my skin started to feel or to look better. I thought I had these perpetual bags under my eyes that would never go away. Those started to look good. I started to get this mental clarity that I never had before in my life. I used to get like anxiety here and there. That went away.
Were you, I don't get too personal, but were you drinking a lot before you did that, or just kind of normal, a couple beers on the weekend kind of guy? Or?
No, I would say I was more like of a binge drinker. So I could go like a couple days in a week without having anything. But then when I would have a beer, that would turn into two, two turned into four. I remember at one point I drank like 7 or 8 beers in a session. I would drink like 2 bottles of wine with my wife. But then there'd be other days where I would just have 3, like 2 or 3. Like typically I would never just have one and be okay. Like I'd always want another one. It would trigger me to want more. And non-alcoholic beer was this thing that I was just kind of like, I wouldn't say scoffed at it by any means, but I was just like, I don't know how that's going to help me. But I swear, like when I was having these cravings in the third week of 75 Hard, I found that NA beer was a great tool for me to curb my cravings and for me to get beyond that. And if you study anyone who is an alcoholic, it's really about getting through that day. And that's what I learned, is how important that was to curb my craving in that moment. And that's what it did. And then,
so 3 weeks in, it was getting like, what was going through your head in like 3 weeks in, no alcohol? Was it, were you getting the sweats, or were you like, what was going on?
Physical side really kind of went away after like 5 days, like the physical kind of dependency on it. And again, I wasn't like waking up and drinking all day long. Like I have friends that have done that, as my father did. Like I've seen that side of it. So I don't want to make it seem like I was this alcoholic like others, but I definitely had a problem. And that's what I've come to realize in this space, is that we're all on these spectrums. Like there's no person that's unique with this. But so 5 days, the physical side of it started to dissipate. By a week, like that was kind of gone. But I was mentally triggered daily because I was so used to habitually drinking at 5 o'clock on weekends. And I'd go for these runs, and I'd be running through my downtown area, and there'd be this amazing beer or pubs that I used to go to with amazing beer. And I'm running past it, seeing everyone inside having a good time. And I was like, oh my God, it was like drawing me toward that. And I would run past it. I'd come home and I would just literally pound like 1 or 2 NA beers and to help me get through that moment. And what happens is every day becomes easier, and every week becomes easier. And then every month became easier. And then after 75 days, I honestly didn't even really want to drink. Like it really changed something in me. And my wife and I think at day 78, we were going out for a steak dinner, and we decided to like order a bottle of wine, and we couldn't even finish it. It was a pretty incredible feeling.
Yeah.
From that point forward, my alcohol consumption has been reduced by like 80%, I would say. So I still drink in moderation, but not a lot, not compared to what I used to. However, I will say, not to jump ahead, but there's times when I'll drink and the next day I'll want that drink more. So for me, I feel like it's better when I take these like stints away from alcohol completely. And then when I go back to it, I'm definitely not the person I was before, that I would just binge drink. But that led to this kind of idea of non-alcoholic beer, and knowing how important it was to me personally, and how I felt with my background in digital marketing and technology, knowing that I could sell it online. That was the catalyst to say, oh, I could probably do this too. And there wasn't that many companies doing it, to my knowledge, at the time. It was just Athletic Brewing was really starting to pioneer it. So I felt like it was early to be able to start to dabble in it, and for that sales channel to be comfortable with, to be able to sell online and through Amazon and whatnot, was things I knew I was really comfortable with. If I didn't have that opportunity to be able to have that as a sales channel, I don't know that I would have jumped into it as like, oh, I want this to be my next business.
Yeah. It clearly must be in much higher demand than even like what I notice. You know, I'm not tapped into the marketing side of this. I'm just one consumer. But I notice now you've got Coors Edge and Heineken Zero and Corona Zero. There's a lot of big name brands that are also making non-alcoholic beer. And maybe I just wasn't paying attention before. But it definitely seems like it's increased significantly in the past 5 years. And it's funny because like when I go, I'm at the grocery store, at a restaurant, a bar, or wherever, like, oh, you know, what do y'all have? And I hear, oh, we've got, you know, Coors non-alcoholic. No dig on Coors, but I'm like, I would rather have Go or Athletic because I'm like, y'all are on my side. Like, it's like trying to get it's like trying to get a gourmet burger from McDonald's. It's like, nah, man, I want my quarter pounder from McDonald's. I don't want my I don't want a McDonald's salad. You know what I mean?
Or a craft beer. I don't want a Coors beer.
I want my craft non-alcoholic beer. Similar experience for me, Joe, is like whenever I stopped, I don't know that I would ever say I was an alcoholic or I had a problem, but part of that is I think like an unhelpful cultural relationship with alcohol where we like gatekeep alcohol problems. Like, you know, we're both hesitant to say I had a problem because there's people who had 5 DUIs and been hospitalized 7 times, have their stomach pumped. It's like, I'm not trying to say I've struggled like this guy struggled, but you don't have to struggle to that extent for it to be a problem that needs to be addressed. And I think a lot of people right now are living with maybe a little bit overconsumption, a little bit a lack of control in their relationship with alcohol. And they go, well, I'm not that guy. I haven't been in trouble with the law. I haven't had to go to the hospital. I've never had to go to rehab. So therefore, I don't really have a problem. And really, you have a problem if you're having these cravings that you're not able to ignore. You know, if you're making in the moment decisions about your consumption, then you have a problem. If you go out with your friends and you tell yourself, I'm not going to drink, I'm going to get water. And then you get there and you have a margarita, you have a problem. You know, it might not be a life-threatening problem at that point, but that's not good. You know, if I was doing that with eggs, it would seem weird. If I was like, oh my gosh, I'm gonna need some eggs, man. I need some stinking eggs. I already had breakfast, but I see Sean eating a McGriddle. I need some eggs. Y'all would think I'm weird, right? So it's like, if you're at that level with alcohol, it's like, you probably need to do something. And for me, non-alcoholic beer was like a huge, huge help, because what I realized is like a lot of that craving was just, maybe I needed some calories in me. Maybe I needed that flavor, that taste, and getting it from like, you know, non-alcoholic IPA. Okay, cool. I'm feeling good. It's like I've tricked my brain into thinking we got what we were looking for. And I don't have that same thing with an alcoholic beer. I would say, oh, I'm going to have one, and then would turn into 2, 3, 4. With a non-alcoholic beer, I can have one. Like, yeah. I used to think having one beer was stupid. It's like, why would you do that? But I can have one non-alcoholic IPA and go, I'm good.
Yeah, and I would look at my wife's a good example. Like, she can open a bottle of wine and have a glass of it, and she's good. Like, she's content. I cannot. Like, even knowing that bottle of wine is open in my house, I'm like, all right, I got to finish that. And that's when I knew, like, yeah, I do have a problem. It's just on it might be on a different level of the spectrum of what we know alcoholism to be. And because I know that, now I got to have these tools around me to be able to use when I'm getting those cravings. And
yeah,
made all the difference.
Yeah, I went to, I didn't go through the AA program, but I went to a couple of meetings. And I went more just to like kind of check it out. I was like, hadn't drank in like maybe 4 years by the time I first went to one. I was like, I want to know, like, familiarize myself with what are these 12 steps? And I found them like extremely helpful. And what's interesting to me is like that community of people, I don't get the gatekeeping, or nobody is sitting there telling me you don't really have a problem. When I'm talking to my friends and I go, you know what, I think I have a problem. I need to like not drink. They're like, you don't have a problem. You're not losing your car keys. You're not,
Why do you think that is? Why do you think that people want to discount the fact that you want to fix this thing? And
I think it's so ingrained in our, I mean, I wonder if you agree with this, Joe. I think it's so ingrained in our culture that, I mean, we outlawed it we got a constitutional amendment to ban it, and it was so ineffective. People revolted so much, we reversed it.
Yeah.
Like, it is so ingrained in our culture that I think there's a, when it's that normal and it's that omnipresent, there's a level to it that, from the inside, you can't recognize as a problem. And a lot of people don't want to recognize maybe for themselves that they have a problem.
Well,
if I have a problem and Joe has a problem, maybe you have a problem. I don't want to say I have a
There's
problem.
also the socialization that goes along in American culture anyway. I don't know. I guess it's like this in other countries. I guess we're non-Muslim countries, maybe. Where there's such a socialization aspect to alcohol that if you don't partake in that, you're sort of on the outside looking in. And I think this non-alcoholic beer gives you a chance to be in the social setting without that ostracization or people going, oh, you don't have a problem, kind of peer pressuring you to do those types of things.
Yes, it's actually, from my viewpoint now, it's turning into like the cool thing. Believe it or not, I know that might sound like wild to some listener, but there's this discovery moment that's going on with this new category. Like, you walk into these stores, and 3 years ago there wasn't NA sections. Now there's NA sections, and now there are people trying different things, different brands, and they're really proud of those. So we are fortunate enough to have a community that really loves our product, and you guys are supporters of that as well. And thank you very much for that. But that is creating this like buzz, almost like, hey, you should really try this brand. It's really helping me. So not only does it taste good, but it's a tool for a lot of other people. And again, a few years ago, like, this didn't exist. So to go in a store and there's a whole new category of innovation of all these different brands and all these different spirits to various beers that are all made without alcohol. And now you have this movement of THC and Delta 9 infused in beverages as well. So people are getting their buzz on in different ways that I think it's just a shift of where we're going as a society. But to kind of tap into something you said earlier about it being so deep seated, I'll never forget the story I heard on Rich Roll's podcast. This was years ago, but this guy that created 1 Year No Beer, it's this membership site that you apply to, and they basically do coaching and do Zoom meetings to get people to reduce their drinking, if not eliminate their drinking. So these guys created it out of the UK. It was their 1 year anniversary of this business. They quit their high paying jobs to do this because they were so dedicated to it. 1 year anniversary comes, they invite their family over for their anniversary party, and these guys are both sober. What does their family bring them to celebrate? I mean, you could get, right? The bottles of wine, liquor,
bottle of wine, champagne. Yeah.
We're like, don't you know like what we're doing? And they did, but it's so ingrained in our culture that it's hard to get around. And even last year, what I did, it just like dawned on me. I was like, what if for the holidays, instead of employers or companies giving gifts of alcohol to either their clients or their employees, why can't it be non-alcoholic beer? So this year, I'm going to double down on that because I think it sends a better message than it would otherwise, right? Because everyone can give liquor. Like, that's just what we've done. And that's what your default. But why not mix it up and send a message like, hey, I'm really thinking about your health here.
Yeah. Oh, that's a great move. Giving me an idea for Christmas time here.
Right.
Yeah, and you don't have to. It's not like this isn't a product for people who have a problem. It's just it's an alternative.
Well,
you don't have to be an alcoholic.
Who is consuming most of this? Like, what do the demographics look like?
Yeah, what I was really surprised at is it is a product for some people that have a problem, and we do 0-party data or post-purchase survey data on our website. So you've purchased off our website. After you purchase, a survey pops up and it'll ask you questions. I change those questions based on information. So right now I'm asking questions about appealing things that people like that they'll gravitate to in a store. Like, what's the most important thing to you, like style or characteristics or branding, blah, blah, blah. But what I did ask, and I have 4,000 survey responses that came direct off the website, is what's your relationship to alcohol? And I can say with statistically significance and confidence that about 70% of our customer base wants to just reduce their alcohol. So they're in the camp of you and I. However, there's over 20% that are completely sober and have been sober. So that cohort of folks, I didn't expect, honestly. I did not expect someone who was an AA or is an AA and is really trying to fight kind of their desire to drink because they're in a way kind of different predicament than we are, to use any beer as a tool. Like, I thought that would be like just
too
something
close,
way too close, and that would trigger them. It's not necessarily, I knew it wasn't the alcohol, because there's less alcohol in our beer than there is in orange juice or apple juice or bread even, but it was the taste of it that would trigger them to want to drink other things. And the first day we opened, our tap room was filled with people that were sober, and I was just like talking to them, and they all had stories. And what's kind of cool about that community is no one's afraid to talk about those stories because they wanted to inspire other people. And that is a very accretive audience to the category in general. So if you think about it, what were these people drinking 5 years ago? Like, they just had O'Doul's, they had seltzer waters. Now, because of the fact that there's these other tools and there's these alternative beverages, more and more people are becoming sober because they know they should. And now there's tools to help them with their cravings.
That's so cool. Yeah. And we barely had O'Doul's, by the way. we were at a pizza place. John and I were at a pizza place the other day, like just waiting for our to-go order. And I was like, man, he got like whiskey Coke or something. I'm like, I want to get an O'Doul, or I want to get a non-alcoholic beer. And I'm like, what do y'all have? He was like, looked at me like I had 3 heads. Now granted, most places now they do have some options. He was like, I think
he had to go check.
I'll go look. And he comes back, he's like, I think we have O'Doul's. And then turns out they didn't even have O'Doul's. But even if they had O'Doul's, it'd be like, they bought it back 6 months ago. Like, this is stuff they shouldn't even be selling it anymore.
Yeah.
But whenever I don't drink alcohol anymore, and whenever but I still get like a craving every now and then. I'm like, oh man, a beer would be so good. Boom, non-alcoholic beer. Instantly. I love drinking them. Like, when I come home from the gym, I can get one of those non-alcoholic beers in me, like that. And then it's like a guilt-free, rehydration move. If I'm drinking a Coors Light after the gym, like, I'm gonna feel like such a loser. but I drink a non-alcoholic beer after the gym. It's like, well,
there's some benefits to beer. I remember, running races, and at the end of the race, they would have beer. They'd have beer at the end of the marathon.
Michelob Ultra is they're all over the ultra marathon scene.
Yeah, and NA beer is even better for you. There's a lot of studies that have been done on this, because what's the kind of the fallacy about the Michelob Ultras of the world, and it's a better alternative to, if you want an alcoholic beer, for sure. So I don't want to misguide anyone here, but the reality is, and something I didn't know, is that for every gram of alcohol, that represents 7 calories. Well, those alcoholic calories are worse for you than carbohydrates. So when you see Michelob Ultra and they can advertise like 2 carbs or 1 carb or 0 carbs, whatever it is, What you don't know is that the calories are coming straight from alcohol. And those calories are, again, worse for you. So if you're having a post-race beer, having an NA beer is far better than having.
How are the alcoholic calories worse for you?
Because they're completely empty. So the calories in an NA beer, they come from maltose. So that's a straight like grain. It's a natural carb. It's a natural carb that will give you the benefits of restored energy, hydration, all of those things. With something like a Michelob Ultra, the calories are, you're getting a lot of that taste and flavor from the alcohol itself. And those calories are completely wasted. Your body will prioritize those to get rid of them, especially at night. That's why people wake up in the middle of the night and have to pee and will have hangovers and have horrible sleep because your body is getting rid of that alcohol. It prioritize that first and foremost. So when you're drinking NA beer, there is really no alcohol. There's very trace alcohol.
So I have a question about that. When you're looking at brewing non-alcoholic beer, is the process itself causing the beer to not have alcohol, or is there a process at the end where alcohol is removed from the beer? How's it produced?
It's a great question. There's a lot of ways to do it. Since we created the brewery in my garage, we didn't have a dealcoholizer, and I am so lucky that we didn't. It would be almost impossible. This machine is gigantic. It requires a ton of power. And the reason why I'm glad we didn't is because basically what happens with those machines, like in Heineken uses them, there's other big breweries. In fact, most of the big breweries do this, where they produce a beer and then they take out the alcohol. Well, when they take out the alcohol, you have a byproduct of alcohol, and then you have your NA beer. Well, that alcohol typically can't be reused, so it's just wasted and dumped. So your yields are significantly less than they would be otherwise. So we had to develop a methodology to make this beer without taking out alcohol. And we did that through my garage, through iterations, through having a lab. We brought in a consultant, Mary Pelletieri, who literally wrote the book on lab management for breweries and beer quality. And we created these SOPs to really build this quantitative data profile of our beers to make sure we can have a great tasting beer that was true to style, but didn't have a lot of alcohol. And it took a long time to get there. And what I found out after the fact, in fact, over this last year, is that most of our peers, they don't even make their own beer. They contract it out. So they make a brand. There's, in fact, most NA beers you see out there, aside from like the big ones you mentioned, or if there's a big brewery like a Heineken, Deschutes, some of these larger ones, they definitely make their own brand. But if you see an NA only brewery, chances are they don't make their own beer.
So are you then stopping the process before fermentation, or is that?
Yeah, we use essentially a grain bill. There's a lot of things that we do, but we use a grain bill that would be adjusted to not create a lot of alcohol in the first place. And then we developed a very sensitive time, temperature, and ratio of ingredients to then handle that side of it in the process of making the beer itself versus taking out the alcohol after the fact.
Got it. Are you having to add a bunch of sugar to give it the flavor? You don't. Oh, that's cool.
No. If you look at the back of our cans, like you will see that, in fact, we're kind of going through this now with Amazon. It's like they often will mistake our beer for alcoholic beer because it's the same exact ingredients. Like we don't add anything. The only thing that we do different here that another brewery, especially our size, wouldn't do is we pasteurize our beer. And what that means is once the beer goes into the cans, the lid's put on, it goes through this conveyance system. In the case of our brewery here, it's about 20 feet and it takes about 40 minutes. And it's just like a hot water shower. And it heats up the can to pasteurize it. And that will kill off anything that could potentially grow inside of it, including the chance of the alcohol to re-ferment itself. And now all of a sudden it goes above that 0.5% threshold, which is considered non-alcoholic.
Interesting. Now, okay, why do I have to show my stinking driver's license when I go to the store and buy non-alcoholic beer?
You do?
Yes.
Each state is different. In fact, each city within each state is different. And there are some states that actually consider non-alcoholic beer like alcohol and it's taxed as such. There's 7 states right now that are like that.
Interesting.
For me, it doesn't make any logical sense just because it has barley in it. Like you have to do that. Like I don't get it. It's just the way that these laws are written.
Yeah. And I don't know what the law is in Texas. I get the impression
you think maybe that's just a dumb sales clerk?
No,
or is that
it's
a
not.
rule?
It's not individual clerks.
Oh, okay.
It's a law. In Naperville, where I'm at, you can't go to a grocery store and buy beer underage, buy NA beer underage.
What is funny though is if I go to the store and I buy kombucha, which has probably more alcohol than your beer, right? I mean, it's still below the threshold of 0.5 ABV, but it's that nobody will ever card you for kombucha.
Yeah, or orange juice. Like it's not labeled on there.
Yeah.
Wait, orange juice has alcohol in it? You
Yeah.
brought that up a couple times. What, like how much?
It depends. You could actually Google after this, and there's a ton of articles about it, but it could vary from 0.2 to 0.6. But it's just like anything. It has such trace amounts. Like you would have to consume, like take our new school sour beer. You'd have to have 40 of those within 2 hours to be intoxicated. You're going to have other ailments before you can do that.
Has anyone ever tried it?
It's a question that comes up. Not that I know of.
It's undocumented.
Yeah, someone's tried it, man.
Somebody's tried it. Definitely somebody's tried it. You know somebody's tried it.
There's a very creative non-alcoholic bottle shop in Lafayette, Indiana, and they experimented with a breathalyzer. So they would drink NA beer or NA beverages and then do a breathalyzer, and they had multiple. And then they would experiment with orange juice and eating like a pretzel bun, and you actually see it go up more with those things than you do.
Wow,
It's interesting.
that's wild. I had no idea. I mean, another thing. Why does almost nobody make it in glass bottles?
There are some for sure. I haven't even went down that path. For me, it was just talking to the brewing team, and that wasn't ever a desire. It was just like easier to make it in cans.
That makes sense. Yeah.
So I thought that you'd figured out a hack on how to open a bar and event center without having to go through a lot of the regulations and, dealing with alcohol beverage, in, all of those, regulatory agencies. Are you telling me that when you open up your brewery, you're still having to deal with all of those alcohol regulations, the same as a full-blown, tap room or brewery?
We are. Reporting's a lot less strenuous because for the TTB, as an example, every quarter we have to file how much alcoholic beer we make, and that's 0. And then they have this very little section for how much did you make in a cereal beverage. And then that's where we just put the barrels that we produce. But the taxes we don't have in Illinois for making this product. But other than that, we had to go through the same exact stuff. And I will say, when we started, the mission was low and no. I do think there's a world with a low alcohol beverage. So you're talking like 2% beer, 1.5%. For folks like us that, maybe want a little something, but you don't want to really have that ramification of a 6% IPA or 7% IPA. So definitely and our goal was to produce anything above 0.5%. So we knew we had to do that anyway. Within a few months, we just kind of stopped that focus on low alcohol beer, mainly because our distribution channel was online and I couldn't sell it.
Yeah.
And we really wanted to double down on just NA. But even today, like we just extended our brewery, and we're at another brewery nearby making our product, and we have to go through the same exact process as you would if it was full alcohol.
That's so wild. That's one of those weird quirks of the law that probably is just not going to get fixed. Like the amount of effort to change that, no congressman is really interested in,
Right.
in helping.
Yeah. What's funny too is the labeling of NA beer, technically you can't even call it beer. You have to call it near beer or brew. You cannot use names like Pilsner. You can't use lager. You can't use ale. You can use IPA. So if you see our beers and you're like, why don't they just call it a Pilsner? We call it Pils. We'll call something blonde. Or if you see these NA companies and you're like, why don't they just call it what it is? Because we're not allowed to. Like you can't. So on one end, they're saying like, well, this isn't beer. But on the other end, it's like, it's regulated as such. So it doesn't make a lot of sense. It's like these laws were.
That's so odd. Yeah, I was wondering why y'all had, I just thought you had creative names. I just thought you were trying to be fun.
Trying to be hip and cool.
Yeah, I mean, sometimes it gets tricky because like our stout, we have to call it dark. It's like bold, or you know what I mean, like something that that you would know.
Are some types of beer or non-alcoholic beer more difficult to brew non-alcoholically than others? In other words, is it harder to brew a stout versus an IPA?
Yeah, I think so. I don't think our stouts are as good as they can be. I would say that's been our biggest challenge. We had a donut stout that people loved, that we made it. We did add things to that one. So we added maple syrup to it. We had a bunch of things to sweeten it up to really give it the flavor profile. It was triple the calories of our normal NA beers to really give it more of a body. But I would say that generally the darker beers are harder for us to make. If we did go the de-alcoholic method, which I had mentioned earlier, it would have been, that's a beer that would be a lot easier to use that process with.
I'm an IPA snob, so the IPAs are top for me. Yeah. All of y'all's IPAs are great.
Thank you.
Who the hell is drinking sours? There's people out there drinking sours?
Oh, man. Have you had our sour?
I have.
You have, or?
It's better than other sours. I'm just not a sours guy.
Yeah. I would say that what we found is there are a cohort of people that love sours, but there's also a lot of folks that just don't like beer and they will really like our sours.
Oh, okay.
It's like kombucha, if you think about it.
Yeah, they do.
Okay.
And if you like kombucha, then you're going to probably like our sour. So
you know what? Maybe I just need to reframe it in my mind. Like I need to go.
Stop thinking of it as beer.
Yeah, I'm going to go reorder some of your sours today. And when they get here, I'm going to say, I'm drinking Joe's kombucha. And I'll like it. Because I do love kombucha. But I'm always like, oh man, I could have had an IPA.
And our strawberry blueberry sour, when you pour that in a stemless wine glass, it just pours beautifully and it's refreshing. It's like, it's a beer that I go to once a week at least.
So what's the plan for the business moving forward?
Plan is to grow it. Right now we are expanding our distribution sales channel. So I'll just back up a second. So because we sell NA beer, we can sell it to non-traditional channels as opposed to beers that that are big today. So if you go back in time, like 5 years ago, like Budweiser was not selling their beer online. They still aren't today. And some of these brands don't need to. But for us to really build our brand, we decided to sell it online first. So we have it online, we have it on Amazon, we have a beer club with over 1,000 members. But what we really knew, the volume would come in distribution. So distribution means stores and restaurants in various areas. In order to get the attention of distribution partners and stores to be able to get that volume, we needed to prove our beer was worth it. There's a lot of breweries now trying to get into the NA game. The alcoholic beer market's oversaturated, so distributors weren't even taking new suppliers. So that was our goal for like year one, is to like get on the radar of these people and say, we're doing things differently. So today I'm proud to say we're in 9 states with distribution. So Colorado, Oregon, Michigan, Indiana, Ohio, Illinois, obviously. And it's that list is growing rapidly. So by the end of this year, we'll be in 19 states. And we work with like tier 1 suppliers. So either Miller houses or Bud houses typically. What that means is that they can service these big chains. So we're in Whole Foods, we're in We will be in Meijer this year. We're going to be in Wegmans on the East Coast. We're in a bunch of chains here like Jewel, and it's been fun to grow that business. So now it's really going double down on those chains, and open more states up, but really kind of taking care of what we have. And two things are happening. That is, when this airs, you guys will be the first podcast I'm on talking about it. But one of them is we're expanding our capacity to 10x what it is, by actually forming a joint venture with another local brewery that has capacity. So one of the things I looked at is to be as efficient with my capital as possible. Where am I going to put my capital, knowing that there's a speed to market issue that's going on right now, and that I need to be as smart as I can. And the reality is there's a lot of capacity out there because the craft beer segment is declining. So a lot of these breweries built up their breweries to make a lot more beer than they could produce today. So I found
interesting
brewery in that predicament, and they were like, they wanted to offset some of their operating expenses. They already had a lot of equipment. I knew I could add to their equipment to get it to a place where we can make our own beer. So we formed a joint venture. So it's a true partnership, a true entity called Craftsmith, and we are going to be brewing each other's beers. So that's going to give us economies of scale. That's going to give us a lot more efficiency and capacity, which was huge for us. And that's actually happening right now. So that'll be announced today. So this is early July. And then secondly, apart from that, I'm taking the first investments ever. So I bootstrapped this business, put several $1 million in myself to establish it, and realized quickly that it is that I could use help. I could use help from in a lot of different ways, but mainly from a capital standpoint to get further faster. So we are partnering with a firm called Listen, and Listen had invested in Calm, if you know the Calm app.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Or Angel's Envy, some really big brands. They really have nothing to do with beer per se, which is kind of awesome. And they're really focused on consumer-based brands. They take 3 brands a year, and proud to say that they were just really intrigued by what we were doing, how we were going to market, and creating this, what I call, and they call, like an innovation platform. And that's the ability to create really whatever we want. And that's the facility that we have here today in Naperville, and the one that we're forming that JV for is to really be able to think about beverages, not necessarily just be isolated to beer, and build something that caters to these alternate tastes.
What's the profit margin relative to alcoholic beer?
Well, when you're starting off, it is not good because you really don't know what's going to hit, what's going to work. So you can't really buy in bulk. You can't buy your cans in bulk. In theory, and in time, the profit margin is going to be better because we use less ingredients. What is really what comes down to. But there's a whole other side to the beer equation in that the larger the tanks and the bigger facilities you have, the better efficiency you'll have, which yields better gross margins.
Sure. Better economies of scale, but you're not there yet, right?
Right. Yeah. So if you have a 15 barrel fermenter, like we have today, we have 15s and 30s. Let's just say the bottom of that fermenter is waste, just like the bottle of wine. The bottom of a bottle of wine. If you have a 60 barrel fermenter or 120 barrel fermenter, that same bottom is going to be waste, but now you have all this efficiency. So now you made one beer, you could can and package it versus making 4 or 6 different batches of that.
Man, that's really exciting. That's a great accomplishment in such a short period.
We're excited, man. It's been, before the show, I said, your assistant asked me, what's one thing that you believe, or the, one thing you want to get across. And I think it's like really focus on what's in front of you. I think when you don't do that, it can be overwhelming. And it's really just about like how you ran the marathon, right? You didn't look at that, or the triathlon. You didn't look at it and say, I need to run, and do all these different things
Yeah.
you'd probably looked at it as like, I need to get to mile 5, or I need to get to mile. And that's really how business is for me, is like, I didn't know, quite frankly, what was going to happen out of my garage. This thing could have ended before it was even a topic of discussion on a podcast. Right. But I got to a place where I felt comfortable taking that next step and did everything I can to then be able to take another step from there. So whereas I have a grand vision of where I want to go, I look at things as like, okay, what do I need to do? And that's why when people ask me, like, what's your 5-year plan, or where are you going to be at in 3 years? Like the answer is bigger, but like, I can't tangibly say, here's exactly what we're going to do, because I will tell you, a year ago, I had no idea where we would be today. Now, we accomplished a lot of things I thought we would do, but certainly the details around those changed, and you got to pivot based on a lot of different things constantly. And I look at it as like, you get to a place and you take it's called a tranche of risk, and then you feel comfortable, and then you take another one. So you never just go all in. Like if I did that, I would have built a $20 million brewery and it could have completely failed, and I would have been in dire straits. Instead, I built a smaller one, and we made it work, and we're at capacity. So I needed to take those other steps. So I get in front of things by about 6 months. And in the beer space, like if I wanted to build my own facility, it would take years. So I didn't have years. So that's how I look at it.
That's a great perspective. Because it's like if I sign up for that triathlon and day 1 today, I'm thinking, oh my gosh, how the hell am I going to ride my bike 112 miles? Well, you know what? I can't right now. And I don't know how I'm going to do that. I don't know how it's going to feel. I don't know, where I might cramp up. I don't know what my nutrition plan can be. Have a long-term vision. Vaguely. You got to have a direction. You got to have a direction, but you can't plan everything perfectly in advance. But I know tomorrow I'm going to ride for an hour. I know on Wednesday I'm going to run 5 miles, whatever it is. Like those digestible chunks are huge. And I think a lot of people in life and in business, they get overwhelmed by the size of the goals that they set, or they struggle to set a goal because they think that it has to, their vision and their path has to be so concrete, and they can't formulate it because you can't see around the corner. To like the book that Sean just released this year, Plateau Jumping, you can't see above that next plateau. And that's kind of what you're talking about with these risk tranches. You can see that next leap, but you can't see 5 leaps ahead.
No, and you don't even know, because it's the current environment you're in. So the story I give people is, when I was on the assembly line, my early 20s, my dream in life was to be a manager at that plant. I was at the Chicago assembly plant. Like, that was my dream. And I would be building these cars, the 1998 Ford Taurus, and they would slowly go on this conveyance system. I'd be put on the seatbelt, the B pillar, and the scuff plate, and I'd be staring at the supervisor through the car on his radio, and I would just admire him so much. And I was like, man, I want to be George Hall. George Hall was a badass to me, and he was this like ex-army dude, commanded attention, and man, that was my idol until I got out of the plant, and then I saw the environment. And that environment expanded. So all of a sudden I wanted to be a car dealer because I was around car dealers, and that was my world. And then I met my wife, and all of a sudden I just saw these other people that were just like independently wealthy, and they were real estate agents, or they had these other big businesses on the finance side of things. And then all of a sudden I was exposed to that, and my environment expanded. So my decision making changed. And that is very similar to business. Like, I would have no idea how to deal with something hypothetically until I get to it. And I'm like, wow, I could approach it in this way that never would have occurred to me before that. And my vision changed because my environment changed.
Yeah. I love that. I mean, I try to adopt that mindset in this business. I can't look around the corner too much, but are we better than we were yesterday? Are we taking advantage of the opportunities when they're coming? And if we're doing that, we're going to be moving in the right direction.
Yeah. And just knowing that you're going to have emotions along the way. And that's something I got better at this time around, is like the last business I create, they're messy. I mean, you guys know this. Like, this isn't, from the outside looking at it, it looks like this linear thing. Everything is going great. Oh my God, you always hit home runs.
Yeah.
There are days and even moments within a day where within like a few minute period, I'll have mixed emotions. I'll have a win and I'm like, oh my God, that's awesome. And then a minute later, I'm like, why'd I do this? Like, I could have had a much easier, I could have created a much easier business. You know, right. I created something that I've like a plant, like with production people, you know, that's here that, you know, you can't really work remote at. So it's like, there's just a lot of mixed emotions as you build something, but you know, like if you're waking up and you feel that excitement, you know, you're headed down the right path. And for me, it was really important this time to build something that really benefited others too. And the messages that we get on a weekly basis of how our beer helps someone in their health journey or their sober journey is incredible to get that feedback and to know you're doing something good in the world. I think really started to fulfill me in ways the last business didn't. The last business was amazing, that's all right, but I didn't know that there was this other side to it where you could really help people in their life.
How often what are some of the things that you've had to say no to? Like, every business that succeeds has to decide what they're not going to do. And I imagine in the space that you're in, there's been a lot of opportunities to create a new product or a new line or something other than beer. We're going to make this other beverage. What is it? What have you said no to?
Well, the one example I gave earlier was the low alcohol beer. You know, I could have could have stuck with that and said, well, I want to, you know, this is what we said we do. Let's do it. I look at data and I try to take my ego out of the equation. So there's so many things that I've learned and said no to. I will say that, you know, when people ask us to make something or make a product for them, like that's an immediate no. Like, I mean, it's an immediate no for a couple of reasons, but one is like, we just don't have the capacity to do that.
You tell me you can't make a decidedly brew? Come on, man. Orange can.
Or just like taking meetings, you know, like the reality is like I want to be there for as many people as possible, but the quantity of people that reach out and want to have lunch, want to do this and that, and you're just like, you just can't do it all. So you got to be very selective in your time. And then I would say from a sales channel standpoint, and this, I give my head of sales a lot of credit here. It's like, we had to say no to a lot of distributors. Like
oh, that's hard.
A few minutes ago that it was really hard to get a distribution partner, but to know the right ones to get. And this is where I had to bring in experts that have been in this business because, you know, we've had inbound leads of many distributors reaching out to us like, I'd love to carry your product. And on the surface, they look like they'd be great partners. I would have probably just said, yeah, that's awesome, man. Let's get in Florida. Let's launch in Florida. How much you want? But the reality is like, you really got to play that out a little bit and see who they can and can't serve, because many distributors can't serve all the chains in that given state or the given area. And that's where you just bring in people that have a lot more knowledge than you, you know, because those are things that are hard to unwind. These contracts with distribution, you're kind of married, you know, once you get into it.
Saying no to an idea is one thing. Saying no to a sale is tough.
Yeah.
And like, oh my gosh, almost every business owner has made that mistake before. Like, get all jazzed up. This is going to be my biggest client. Okay, now I'm losing money on this deal. What have I done? Yeah.
How do I get out of this now?
What do you think is going to change with the industry? I mean, obviously there's a lot higher demand. There's a lot more available than there were 10 years ago. Do you think we're on a linear growth path, or is there something big that's going to happen?
I think it's going to be compounded growth in the non-alcoholic space for a while. I think there's going to be more alternative beverages coming to market so people can get their buzz, like I mentioned earlier, in different ways, like THC. You'll see a lot more of that infused in beverages. There'll probably be a day in our lifetime where there's psilocybin in beverages as well. So I just think there's more and more information coming out about alcohol and its harmful effects versus some of these alternate things. So I see that definitely trending. I also see some more policy and regulation on the NA space because, you know, like I mentioned earlier, we have this pasteurizer that was a pretty hefty investment to get. Many places that are making non-alcoholic beer today don't pasteurize their beer. And I think that can be a big safety concern and safety issue. And I think it's going to take one or two people to get sick to then really the government step in and lay down some stringent guidelines, because there's beers you could buy today on the market and they get warning labels on the cans themselves to say this hasn't been pasteurized. And that just, again, when something's in a can and it's not done properly, you don't know what's going on inside there. So you can drink it. And in the 90s, there's, some of that died of botulism, it was a juice, I think an apple juice or orange juice. So it's a
I remember that.
It's a real threat. So I think you're going to see that happening as well.
Yeah. Hey, final question for you, Joe. What would you say is your best decision-making tip for business owners and leaders?
Focus on what's in front of you. Honestly, like some of this stuff is cliche, but it is there's truth in it. And I can say that you have to start somewhere, right? You can't sit here and not take action. So you have to start. So you got to start, and then you explore. It's kind of like, I look at it like you're in this huge like conference center, and there's a ton of rooms in it. So you open the door to one room, you look around. All right, this is good. I'm comfortable. You open that next door, and you got to keep doing that. And sometimes you're in a room longer than other times, and sometimes you're in it and you close the door and you back out. And you're like, hey, I want to go a different direction here. But the reality is you're constantly moving forward. You're constantly taking some sort of action, and then you're evaluating every step of the way so you don't get overwhelmed, and you make decisions that are appropriate with the time. And that's where I think we did a good job. And then at the end of the day, like, you'll look at it and the public view will be like, oh, this like really nice ramp or this nice curve of like none of these issues happen, where the reality is there's probably 100 doors you open and you backed out of, and you're like, hey, I don't want to be in here. Like, this isn't right for me at this moment in time. So I think it's just like our brand says, you got to go, which is the equivalent of our just do it. Like you can easily overthink things, but if you want to make a change in your life, you really have to just take a step forward and then evaluate and then take tranches of risk as you go.
Yeah. Hey, Joe, I know you got to say no to a lot of things in business. I appreciate you saying yes to talking with us today. It was fun talking with you again.
It's always great talking to you guys. I'm so proud of you that you kept going with the podcast. It's easy to start something and stop it. I know I did as I was building Go, and there's a huge time commitment to this, and you guys have done a great job. And again, really appreciate your support and drinking Go Brewing. I mean, that means the most to us to hear that in organic conversations.
That's right.
Heck yeah, man.
Thanks a lot.
GoBrewing.com.
That's right. GoBrewing.com. You can find it in a store near you, hopefully too.
My takeaway from talking with Joe is about looking at the incrementality of building a business, how he talked about setting the progression of risk in tranches and identifying what that risk is, and then moving on to the larger or the next and bigger risk. But what I got from that is, obviously there's the obvious sort of takeaway, which is don't put all your eggs in one basket at once. Don't take all the risks at once. But what I got from what he was talking about is looking at always having the next risk lined up. In other words, the next thing he's going to do, the next step in risk that he's taking to advance the business.
Yeah, my big takeaway is that he doesn't have a set of 100 goals that he's going to accomplish, 100 tasks that he's got to knock down. He has a direction, he has an aim, but he's given himself flexibility. And a lot of times I think we can kind of plan too much, create too much of a plan, create too many objectives that we have to adhere to. But it's okay to say, hey, you know what, we've been pursuing this for 6 months. It's not going to work out. Let's pivot and move a little bit more towards this other aim that we were focused on. And I think we can learn something by being flexible.
You just made a great decision to listen to this episode of Decidedly. Make another great decision by subscribing to the show and leaving us a 5-star review wherever you're listening. We appreciate the support. It helps business owners like you find our community and defeat bad decision-making in their own lives. For more decision-making insights, check us out at decidedlypodcast.com, on Instagram at decidedlypodcast, or grab a copy of Sanger and Sean's books from the links in the show notes. Finally, we'd like to thank Shelby Peterson of Transcend Media for editing and post-production of the show. Thanks for listening. I'm Morgan, your producer, and this is Decidedly.